Hello and welcome back to the Atlas Agency's continuing investigation of the Path to Carcosa cycle for Arkham Horror the card game. Today I'll be taking a look at the 12 player cards in the 6th and final Mythos Pack of the cycle, Dim Carcosa. Hope you enjoy! The pattern we're seeing with the 6th Mythos Pack of each cycle is that it's much more focused on higher level cards, and that's definitely the case here in Dim Carcosa. There are no level 0 cards in this pack. All 12 of the cards that we get here cost experience, and several of them are on the higher end of the experience scale. Every class except for Survivor gets a level 5 card in this pack. Let's start with a look at the Mystic cards. Mystics opened the Carcosa cycle by breaking the laws of space with astral travel, and now they're closing the cycle here by breaking the laws of time as well with Time Warp, a new level 2 event. Time Warp costs 1 resource, fast, play immediately after an investigator at your location finishes resolving an action during his or her turn, undo that action, return the game state to exactly the way it was before that action was performed, including that action's cost. So when you really screw something up, this is your get-out-of-jail-free card. I think this is a really cool effect. I'm almost surprised that this is only level 2 and not higher. At this price, I expect this is going to be something that I pick up fairly often. I especially like this for builds that make big plays, anything involving double or nothing. If you're going to invest multiple resources into a big action, then this gives you a second chance at getting that to go off successfully. So I like this one, and I think it's one of the standout cards in this pack. Seal of the Elder Sign is a level 5 Mystic skill card with 1 wild icon. It has the Spell and Expert traits. Do not reveal Chaos tokens from the Chaos bag for this test. Treat the Chaos token revealed for this test as an Elder Sign. When this test ends, remove Seal of the Elder Sign from the game. If this didn't remove itself from the game, it would be pretty easy to abuse. You could just pair up with Min, repeatedly commit it to Min's tests, and her Elder Sign ability would bounce it back to your hand every time. So on top of taking the uncertainty out of a skill test, this also guarantees the activation of an Elder Sign ability. 5 experience is a little steep, but still late in the campaign I could see picking this up, especially if you or a teammate has a good Elder Sign ability. Zoe's +1 damage comes to mind there. It's nice that as a skill there's no resource cost to use it, and it does have the spell trait so it can be drawn with Arcane Initiate's ability. Guardians get 2 cards in this pack, and I think they're both actually fairly narrow, unlike what they got in the last pack, Black Star's Rise, which had 2 Guardian cards that were pretty broadly useful. Let's look first at Eat Lead. This is a level 2 event, 0 resources, fast, play when you activate the Fight ability on a firearm asset. You may spend X additional ammo tokens from that asset. When you reveal Chaos tokens for this attack, reveal X additional Chaos tokens. Choose 1 to resolve, and ignore the rest. I'm not really a fan of this one. For most situations, I don't think it's going to be worth the investment. Either the 2 experience to buy it, or the card and the ammo to use it. There's really only one build where I'd consider running this. I did a campaign recently with a Zoe deck that ran a combination of double or nothing and shotgun, basically aiming to one-shot boss enemies by going all in with skill cards, including Reckless Assault, on a big double or nothing shotgun blast. It was fun and fairly successful. I killed at least 2 bosses in that campaign by doing 10 damage in 1 attack. In that setup, Eat Lead would offer a little insurance against an autofill token for that big all-in shotgun attack, so that could be useful if you're not planning on needing the second ammo off of the shotgun. But if you have a teammate with level 2 Mystic access, then I think there's actually a better card in this pack that you can run as a safeguard in that situation. We'll look at that card in just a second. Our second Guardian card is Armor of Ardennes. This is a level 5 asset that costs 4 resources, occupies your body slot, and has a health value of 4. When damage is assigned to Armor of Ardennes, exhaust Armor of Ardennes to cancel 1 of that damage. At 5 experience, this is a pretty expensive solution to a problem that, generally speaking, isn't going to be a high priority concern for the Guardian class. Guardians are usually more worried about horror than damage, and with the exception of Carolyn Fern, a pool of 9 health is standard for the class. I guess we're about to get Leo, who has 8. Still pretty good. The armor does a good job at accomplishing what it sets out to do, but it seems like right now, outside of a few specific scenarios that put extra pressure on your health, this isn't going to be worth the heavy experience investment. Now, I haven't been able to play with Carolyn yet, but I can see how maybe this would be a good option for her, especially since she's barred from taking some of the high-level Guardian weapons, so she has fewer cards that are competing for this experience. I think this may be kind of a plant for her and for other future sanity-weighted Guardian investigators like her, but right now I think the majority of the class just won't be that interested in this card. The two Seeker cards in Dim Carcosa are both tools for the same purpose. They're both about giving you access to the best and most needed of your other cards. We'll start by taking a look at Eidetic Memory. Now, you can see this card, but as I record this, I actually don't have it pulled up, and I promise I haven't looked at this card in at least a week, so let's see how I do here. Eidetic Memory is a level 3 Seeker event. It has a dash as its resource cost. The artwork is a woman at the top of a ladder in what looks like the library from The Beast's Castle in Beauty and the Beast. She's got some kind of weird motion going on around her, like maybe she might be about to fall off the ladder, but she's not. She's just accessing her mind palace so that she can recall some detail that she's memorized. I believe the card has the insight trait. The text says, play Eidetic Memory as an exact copy of any event card with the insight trait in any player's discard pile. I don't remember the flavor text. I imagine it's probably something like, only losers write things down or something like that. Alright, time to look and see how I did. Well, I definitely missed some things. I forgot to take even a stab at guessing the icons on it. I think if I'd tried to guess, I would have said either one wild or no icons at all. It's got one intellect and one agility. I did get the level correct. I was a little worried I'd missed that. I made up a ladder in the artwork. It doesn't look like she's actually standing on one. She's sort of flying through the library, and she has radio waves shooting out of her head. I missed the trait on the card. It's Spirit, not Insight, and I forgot that it removes both itself and the event that you played from the game. Other than that, I sort of got it. I guess I do not have a level 3 eidetic memory. Maybe I have like a level 0 version. The Insight trait actually appears on every single Seeker event card that's been printed to date, except for Eidetic Memory itself. It also appears on a handful of other non-Seeker events, including Drawn to the Flame and Sure Gamble, so there are a lot of great targets for this card. I do like this card quite a bit. When I took it as Min, I used it as a third copy of Cryptic Research. That's a level 4 event from the core set. It feels good to spend 3 experience on an Eidetic Memory and then play it as a copy of a level 4 or 5 card. I think this one's only going to get better as the card pool grows and we get more and more events to target with it. Next up is an upgraded level 5 version of No Stone Unturned. The previous level 0 version of this card from the Carcosa Deluxe box cost 2 resources and let an investigator at your location search the top 6 cards of their deck for a card to draw. This new version is fast, still costs 2, and can be played now during any player window. Instead of the target searching just through 6 cards, now they get to search their entire deck for a card, and it's also picked up an intellect icon. I think this is the strongest tutoring effect that we've seen in the game so far. It's going to be as good as you or your ally's best card, as long as that card is still in your deck. Note that it can't pull from the discard pile. This seems especially good if an investigator on your team has a really strong signature card, especially one that's best when it comes out early on, or a single copy of a card with a high experience cost, such as one of the rogue cards with exceptional, like the Gold Pocket Watch. Pretty good support card, and the bigger your party and the more leveled up your party gets, the better this card is going to be. The Mystic class picks up a new level 2 event called Time Warp. 1 resource, fast. Play immediately after an investigator at your location finishes resolving an action during his or her turn. Undo that action. Return the game state to exactly the way it was before that action was performed, including the action's cost. This is a pretty interesting card from a rules standpoint. A lot of the times when you use this, it's going to be pretty clear how to roll back the clock. For example, it's easy to figure out what to do if you just failed an important skill test, maybe one where you committed several cards, and you may even just intend to immediately try that same test again after you rewind, so you basically can just put the token back in the bag and draw it again. But for the more complicated situations, this card does have a pretty detailed FAQ section over on ArkhamDB, which I recommend that you check out. I won't summarize all of it here, but one of the important points is that if you learn the order of cards from a deck, those cards need to be returned to that ordering. However, a randomized deck is a randomized deck. If you never learn the ordering of any cards, then keeping that deck shuffled is fine. So, for example, if you undo an action that was spent on an old book of lore, where you looked at the top 3 cards of your deck, drew one, and then shuffled the other two back into the deck, then you would need to locate those 3 cards and put them on top of the deck in the order that they were originally in. But the rest of your deck, which got shuffled after the action, you wouldn't need to worry about that. You never knew what those cards were, and again, random is random. Another point is that if you can't return the game to the exact state it was in before, say for example you can't remember what those 3 cards were, then the effect fails and has no effect. So those are some of the rulings related to this card. There is more, so again I encourage you to go check out the FAQ section over on ArkhamDB to read the rest of it. Hot off the presses, we have a level 2 version of the Survivor Asset newspaper, or as I like to call this one, today's newspaper, keeping you up to date with the latest news, weather, sports, and dismemberments from around Essex County. Just like the original newspaper, this one costs 1 resource and gives you +2 intellect while investigating if you have no clues. There's now also a second ability on the card. When you would discover 1 or more clues at your location, if you have no clues, discover an additional clue at your location, and the card has gained 1 intellect icon, so now it has a total of 2. I'm pretty fond of this one. In any scenario where you're going to be repeatedly spending clues, where you can count on dropping back down to having 0 a few times over the course of the game, this can give you a pretty nice bump in your clue gathering ability. I've had a chance to use this in a few scenarios that were like that, and the card seemed really quite good. There are a decent number of scenarios like that scattered throughout Dunwich and Carcosa, and in the scenarios that don't have you spending clues as frequently, I think this is still useful enough, especially with the double intellect icons. It's also an item, so it's a valid target for scavenging, and there are currently no other in-faction scavenging targets with double icons like this. So I think this one's a keeper, definitely worth the subscription price for newspaper level 2. Our second Survivor card is Infighting. This is a level 3 event that costs 1 resource. Fast, play after the enemy phase begins, cancel all attacks made by non-elite enemies against you this phase, and the card has a decent set of icons, 2 intellect and 2 agility. I know at some point the Forgotten Age is going to drop me into a pit of 100 snakes in a temple somewhere, and I'm going to wish that I had this card, but until that happens, I just can't see myself taking Infighting. It just seems really overcosted at 3 experience, especially when you compare it to Dodge at level 0. I think the fact that it's restricted to the enemy phase really hurts it. If you could play it during the investigation phase and cancel a turn's worth of attacks of opportunity, then that might be something. And also the fact that it doesn't work against elites is another pretty hard knock against it. Throughout the cycle, we've had a few cards that seem to want to go into a deck that deliberately tries to engage with multiple enemies. Trench Knife, Not Without a Fight, and to some extent I'll See You in Hell. And now Infighting, but I'm just not sure that a deck has really emerged that makes use of that theme yet. Our first rogue card is a new permanent, Karen's Obel. This is a level 1 card, but it's exceptional, meaning it costs 2 experience rather than just 1 to purchase, and you can only have 1 copy of it. When earning experience during the resolution of a scenario, if you were not defeated during that scenario, you earn 2 additional experience. If you were defeated during that scenario, you are killed. This is definitely one of the more interesting and unique cards in this pack, so assuming you take this after the first scenario of an 8-scenario campaign, this is going to net you a total of 10 experience. So after scenario 1, you buy it for 2 experience. It won't trigger until the resolution of the next scenario after you purchase it. So after scenario 2, you would be at a net 0, just breaking even on the 2 that you spent to buy it. After scenario 3, you'll have a net gain of 2, and then by the time you finish scenario 7, you'll have gained a net of 10 experience from the Obel. 10 extra experience over the course of a campaign is pretty cool, and I like how now that the card pool's a little bigger and there are a few more cards available to buy, we get this little boost that helps us buy a larger slice of them. So, of course, this comes at a significant risk. If you take too much damage or horror in a scenario, or if you end up defeated some other way, then you're going to be killed for good. I think it was in Drawn to the Flames' recent interview with Matt Newman where he talked about how he wanted rogues to be the class that occasionally would just say, forget this, I'm out of here, and abandon the other players. We have a rogue card that literally says that, I'm out of here, that makes it easier to resign. So I think it's really neat that the Obel gives rogues an incentive to do that, to behave in line with the flavor of their class. If they don't want to get killed, they'll play it safe and retreat a little earlier than maybe they ordinarily would. I haven't been able to try this one out yet. I worry a little that although this looks really neat in theory, in practice it might not turn out to be so fun. I think there's a social side to this also that would prevent me from ever using it in a multiplayer campaign. I just don't like the idea of potentially wiping out mid-campaign when you're playing with another person. Yeah, you can switch to a new zero experience character to keep going, but that seems like that would still be really disappointing, not just for you, but also for your teammates, who now have to carry on with someone who's been hobbled experience-wise. I'm much more likely, I think, to try this in solo, where I'm not affecting anyone else's experience, and if I lose, I can turn right around and spin up a new campaign. I think the verdict is still out for me on whether this will be a standard feature of my rogue decks from here forward, but at least on paper and thematically, I think this is a really cool card. The pack's next rogue card is Lupara. This is a level 3 card, a one-handed firearm weapon that costs 3 resources, uses 2 ammo. Playing Lupara does not provoke attacks of opportunity. As an action, you can spend one of the 2 ammo to fight. You get +1 combat and deal +1 damage for this attack. If Lupara entered play this turn, you get an additional +1 combat and deal an additional +1 damage for the attack. I don't have too much to say about this one. I do think it's a pretty neat card, and I really like how it combos with the card Sleight of Hand. You can drop it into play with Sleight, use it twice for a total of 6 damage, and then at the end of your turn, you scoop it back up, and you can play it and use it again. The fact that it's one-handed also, I think, makes it easier to use with Sleight. That's an edge it has over the higher-level weapon that the Rogues got in the equivalent pack in the Dunwich cycle, which was Chicago Typewriter, a two-handed firearm. You don't have to give up your everyday use weapon, your Derringer or your Switchblade, if you want to throw this down just to deal with a bigger threat. So thumbs up from my free hand for Lupara. Our third and final rogue card is Cheat Death, a level 5 event. 1 resource, fast, play when you would be defeated, disengage from each enemy engaged with you, discard all cards in your threat area, heal 2 horror and 2 damage, and move to any revealed location with no enemies. If it's your turn, end your turn, remove Cheat Death from the game. Note that this only saves you from a defeat by damage or horror. It doesn't outright prevent defeats by other means, so if you have a card effect that just outright says you're defeated, like for example the player card I'll See You in Hell, this is not going to save you from that. I haven't played with this one yet, and I feel a little uncertain about it. I'm not convinced yet that it's worth a 5 experience spend, maybe late in a campaign. Its effects are all pretty nice though. You get a handful of things out of it, all at fast speed. You get a nice burst of healing, a chance to clear out everything in your threat area, and a little elusive style teleport effect to get you out of harm's way. All those are good things. You do have to be in a position though to be defeated before you can use this, and I kind of wonder how common it'll be to see people intentionally take suicidal attacks of opportunity just for the chance to use the movement effect of this card. I see this card come up often in discussions of Charon's Obel, and I've always felt like that's kind of counterproductive. You're getting 10 experience from taking the Obel, so do you really want to turn around and spend half of that just to somewhat mitigate the risk of taking the Obel in the first place? I guess if you already really wanted to take Cheat Death anyway, then that's fine, but if you're taking it specifically because you're worried about the Obel, then maybe you're better off just not taking the Obel in the first place. We have 1 neutral card in this pack, and it's kind of a big deal. Key of Ys. I think I pronounced this yes in a previous video, so sorry about that. This is a level 5 neutral asset. It's unique, so you can only have 1 copy and play at a time. Costs 3 resources to play, occupies your accessory slot. You get +1 to each of your skills for each horror on Key of Ys. When any amount of horror would be placed on you, place 1 of that horror on Key of Ys. Placed on you here means on your investigator card, so horror assigned to other assets that you have won't be redirected to the key. And then when the key leaves play, discard the top 10 cards of your deck. It also has 4 sanity. The flavor behind this card comes from the myth of the city of Ys. In the myth, the city was founded on land reclaimed from the sea, and to protect it from flooding, it had a levee with a gate that could be opened for ships during the low tide. The Key of Ys is the 1 key that opened that gate, and unfortunately, it gets used to open the gate during a storm at high tide. The why and the how vary from version to version, but in some, it's someone being tempted to do it by the devil, and as a result, the city gets flooded. That second forced ability, the one that dumps 10 cards from your deck into your discard pile, that's meant to evoke the image of the water crashing through the floodgates and flooding the city, and the horror building up on the key, I guess, is you slowly going mad and becoming increasingly tempted to go open the gate and flood the city. The card is really strong, quite possibly the strongest one to come out of the Carcosa cycle. It's an ongoing boost to all of your skills for as long as you can keep the card in play, and that's really good. You probably are going to get a few turns of +2 or even +3 out of this. The balancing features are meant to be the experience cost, the fact that it's unique so only one player can use it, the fact that it can eventually be destroyed by horror, that it costs 3 resources and fills an accessory slot, and the 10 cards that you lose from your deck when it finally does break. It's also vulnerable to treacheries that might force you to discard assets from play. None of those drawbacks really seem like they're significant enough to really dampen the power of the card, though. Outside of the Dunwich campaign, I don't think losing 10 cards from your deck is all that significant. You might take a horror if you empty your entire deck, but the key itself is going to take 4 horror hits for you, so you should still be coming out ahead. I know some are of the opinion that this card is a little too good, to the point where they don't think it's healthy for the game. I kind of understand that point of view, but I don't really know that I'm there myself. It is a level 5 card in the final pack of the cycle. I think it's good to have some high-level player cards that really have an epic and exciting feel. We don't get card rarity in LCGs, but it's kind of cool to occasionally have something that feels like it would be a mythic rare type of card if this game were a CCG. And since this is a cooperative game, if you really don't like the card, you can simply avoid using it. Myself, I've played with this a little, and so far I've enjoyed having it. I don't know that it's a card I'm going to use all the time in every deck, but when I have played with it so far, it's been fun. And the final card of the pack is the Mystic Event Time Warp. 1 resource, fast, play immediately after an investigator at your location finishes resolving an action during his or her turn. Undo that action. Return the game state to exactly the way it was before that action was performed, including that action's cost. This card is disappointing because it shows how we've really failed to convey the idea of consequences to the Mystic class. Come on, Mystics. Temporal manipulations can create branches in time, unstable dimensional openings, spatial paradoxes, time loops. Do you want to get stuck reliving the same moment over and over forever or never having existed at all? I think what it is that we've been lured into a false sense of security by one too many successful late scenario delve too deeps where the consequences weren't really consequential. Yes, this card will save you from accidentally blasting your fellow investigator in the face with a misaimed shotgun blast, but at what cost? So thumbs down from me for Time Warp. I hope you've enjoyed this look at the Dim Carcosa player cards. That doesn't quite wrap us up for the player card rundowns for this cycle, as I still need to go back and do the cards from the Carcosa Deluxe box. I got a little behind this cycle on everything that I wanted to get done. If only there were some way to get an edge over the flow of time. As always, thanks for watching the Atlas Agency, and good luck in your own investigations of the Path to Carcosa cycle.